Daniel Harris, good morning.
Morning.
We can't start there. We're going to start with Marcus Rashford. What a 48 hours it's been for Rashford. What a 48 hours it's been for British society, I dare say.
Yeah, what a man. It's really... I keep turning over in my head what has happened, and I keep repeating it because it's so remarkable that Marcus Rashford sat there in his garden in shorts, socks and slides and called out the government's cruelty. What? And that was something that just that simple fact has been absolutely staggering me for the last couple of days. But if you add to the end of that, and the government caved, it sounds like an even more remarkable thing. And I think what Marcus Rashford did that was of such genius was that there's a lot of noise in politics, there's a lot of detail, and there's a lot of chatter. And he cut through that because he just found one thing, and he brought it all down to one thing. He brought down what this Tory government stands for to one thing. Do we care as a society that children are going hungry? And Boris Johnson originally said, no, we do not care. And the problem for him was that he was in a battle that he couldn't possibly win, because Marcus Rashford is that rarity. He's a footballer who everyone likes. It's impossible not to like him because he radiates dignity, integrity, joy, love, happiness, all of those things. And it's also the case that because he's a footballer, he's in the public eye. So let's say Boris Johnson had stuck to the original decision. What's going to happen after Marcus Rashford plays for United against Spurs on Friday night? He's going to be interviewed. He's going to be asked questions about this, having, in the meantime, spent time on Twitter building even more momentum. So there was no way that Boris Johnson could hope to have won a public relations battle with Manchester United and England's centre-forward, who happens to be this exceedingly unfathomably likeable individual. And as I said, he boiled it down to just one issue. There was no prevaricating, no party politics. He didn't make it part of any greater picture. He just said, all children have the right to one decent meal a day. Do you agree? And that kind of question is impossible to respond to in the wrong way. And that was what we saw.
Yeah, it was a masterstroke, really, and it, even kind of calling it a masterstroke kind of feels like that there was a huge calculated effort on Marcus Rashford's part to actually decide how to go about this. That wasn't the case at all. There was one issue here that meant so much to him. It was something that he'd spoken about at the very start of lockdown in terms of putting up money for school meals that were now going to be missed because of the closure of schools around the UK. He had one cause and he followed through on it. And in the political climate at the moment, it was going to be a cause that was going to be very, very hard to go against. But it's particularly interesting at the moment, given how, what are we, 2 months out since Hancock's comments about Premier League footballers, about how they should take a pay cut, about how they should try and make a difference. This is your difference. You know, that this is the difference that the Tory government were looking for, and how society can be impacted by these footballers.
I only semi-agree with that.
Okay.
I don't think that the Tory government were actually looking for the footballers to do anything. I think that they were looking to misdirect from their own culpability for the absolute mess that was coronavirus in the UK. And so what Matt Hancock was doing when he talked about footballers was saying, look over there, because he felt that they were an easy target. Because here's what you have in football. Football is more or less on the playing side, not on the management side, and certainly not on the boardroom side or the suit side, is a meritocracy. So there's a reason why in the highest echelons of football, you have more people of colour and more working class people than you have in any other arena. And the reason for that is that it's a meritocracy. You can't deny how good someone is at football, nor would you want to, because there's so much money in football that no owner is prepared to do that anymore. So what Matt Hancock was doing was he was saying, well, we've got these people in society who I think people dislike. We've got working class people, we've got people of colour. So I think that I can easily redirect people's bile in the way that my government and my party have been doing for decades and centuries towards these people, and they will get so angry with the footballers that they will cease to notice the absolute mess that I am making, that I personally am making of Corona, but also that the whole government's making of Corona. And that was why Matt Hancock talked about footballers. The last thing Matt Hancock wanted was Marcus Rashford taking on the government and winning and showing the government up. That is something that Matt Hancock definitely did not want. But that is what happened. And actually, just this morning, Matt Hancock has called Marcus Rashford Daniel Rashford on national television, which I'm not sure if that shows the contempt with which he holds Marcus Rashford and footballers in general, that he's done it on purpose to misdirect in the way that, say, Alex Ferguson might have done. Or if he just is so unasked about this whole thing that he doesn't even know the guy's name well enough to remember it for a television interview. It's really very hard to say. But yeah, this is an outcome that Marcus Hancock, Daniel Hancock, Daniel Handjob, that he did not want. And unfortunately, the wrong footballer responded. And I was talking to a friend actually the night before last, and we were discussing what happens when all the other players get involved. Yeah. That will be something. But in retrospect, there was a particular purity about Marcus Rashford, partly because he's Marcus Rashford, and partly because of this reducing everything to this single issue and saying, I don't want people to suffer how I suffered. And most of the people watching that interview, and most of the people, all the people, not all the people, but almost all the people in the corridors of power, will not know what it means to go without a meal because your parents can't afford to buy you food. And so no one is really in a position to say, okay. And it was the purity of Marcus Rashford doing that one thing by himself that also was so powerful. And now I wonder where he's going next. I hope it's somewhere, and I can't wait to see.
But he's already cemented that legacy now, Daniel. Like, this is an incredible thing to already be remembered for. It's not surprising. It's surprising that a U-turn occurred, I think, and perhaps we didn't expect any of the explosion of political mindedness to come over the last couple of weeks, but nobody could have expected any of the things that happened in 2020 to happen anyway. I think the sky's the limit for this guy in terms of continuing on this path, because he's now been given an opportunity and he's taken the opportunity and he's seen that speaking out politically and trying to make a difference actually works. Using your platform works. I mean, I'm sure many Premier League footballers would have been unsure about that in recent times. Is speaking out actually the best thing to do? Marcus Rashford has proven...
It's really hard to say to people, this is what you have to do because you have that platform and this is your responsibility.
But we haven't always seen the positive outcome of that.
Sure. It was certainly, so what I'm saying is, whether a platform accords someone a social responsibility is difficult, because when you have footballers who are young, footballers particularly of colour, might not want to draw attention to themselves, because we know how this country reacts often when people of colour do that. So for me to sit here and say all the other footballers are obliged to do something like this is, I would feel uncomfortable doing that. But at the same time, I would certainly enjoy it if they do, because they can help us make the world a better place. And that doesn't mean I expect them to make the world a better place, but the world being a better place is a situation that I would relish. And I think what it teaches us is that we all have a responsibility of some kind to do what we can. And what we can, obviously, depends on our circumstances and how we feel. And we're not obliged to invite aggravation or to jeopardise our mental health, given the shrillness that often operates in the UK that we're all familiar with. But yeah, if people with platforms the size of Marcus Rashford's do opt to do something, then hopefully they've seen that there can be a result and that people might just respond with love rather than hate.
Daniel, is that one of the things that makes this a little bit more remarkable too? Because, I mean, obviously we watched Michael Jordan in The Last Dance in the last couple of months, and we saw where, he swerved, potentially using his position of power, and he said, rich white guys buy sneakers too. You've got a 22-year-old here, Marcus Rashford, with the backdrop of the fact that the tabloid press in the UK have ripped guys like Raheem Sterling apart previously. It takes a lot to put your head above the parapet in the way that Rashford has in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely does. And for that, he deserves even more credit than we're already giving him, which I don't know if that credit even exists. I'm sure someone would sign off on it somewhere. But it's here's the scene of that. To compare him with Jordan is really difficult, because the situation with race in America is so tense. And so it would be, I'm not going to sit here criticising the position that Michael Jordan took, because it's really hard for me to understand Michael Jordan's position and to understand why he, as you say, said, yeah, Republicans wear sneakers too, and thought that was enough. And he's definitely not doing that anymore. But yeah, I'm absolutely certain that Rashford considered what the downsides were, because they were multifarious, and decided that it was worth it. I mean, you kind of hope that at some level he knew, he knows that he's loved by the people that actually know him and that actually love him, and they would be in a position to protect him. But also, I hope he understands that what his position is in British football and British society, and that he's not a guy who anyone has anything bad to say about. So ultimately, he perhaps felt like he had less to fear than other people might have felt. But what it would be good to see now is other people taking the lead from Marcus Rashford. In that there's a phrase in the Ethics of the Fathers that no one's obliged to finish the job, but no one is free from having to do the work. And that is the inspiration of Marcus Rashford, who hasn't finished the job, but he's done some work, and he has more or less by himself made the world a better place. And that's something that is open to all of us in one way or another, whether it's learning a bit more about how to treat people correctly, whether it's giving money to charity, whether it's trying to do something with our spare time to make the world a better place, whether it's trying to educate the people around us. We can look around very easily and see what an absolutely staggering, revolting mess the world is in, and we can decide whether we want to absent ourselves from the bid to do something about that, or whether we feel that we're part of the solution.
Does this change the relationship between footballers and the public in Britain? I realise that is a very, very broad question, and nobody was in any way a hater of Marcus Rashford before this. I kind of mean as a whole, and it kind of does tap back into Matt Hancock's comments a little bit, as if there was, like you were making the correct point, that he was trying to speak the voice of the people while saying that. He was like, here's the thing that people hate, let me go after those people and try and tap into the fact that people hate the richness of British footballers and Premier League footballers in general. Does this change things at all in terms of a public perception?
Well, the thing is, it's not the richness of British footballers that people hate. It's the fact that they are often working class and often of colour, and people who didn't come from money. And that is what Matt Hancock thinks that people hate, because his party and he hate that. Because what Matt Hancock didn't call out was, he didn't call out any people, like he didn't call out billionaires, he didn't call out corporations, and those people are taking a lot more money out of the system than footballers, who, as I said, are not the victims of privilege, they're the beneficiaries of talent and meritocracy, which in theory is what the Tory party claim they represent. So yeah, Matt Hancock thought that he was singling out this body of society who loads of people hate. But what he failed to calculate was there are also a lot of people who like these people. Football is a pastime of many people in the population, and you don't go around hating footballers necessarily as a body. People that don't like football might have this thing about footballers, perhaps, but that's not really the majority of people. Either love football, so respect footballers, or don't care about football. And that was Matt Hancock's problem. So whether there's a broken relationship between football and the people at all, I'm not sure, because there's a problem in the relationship between people like Matt Hancock and football and footballers, but I don't think that there's particularly a problem with society and footballers, because most people in society aren't massive dickheads who resent people using their talent and working really hard to get what is due to them, and to be part of one of the biggest industries in the world that brings joy and happiness and identity to millions of people. Like, most people respect that. Most people feed off that. And I think Marcus Rashford in particular is the encapsulation of that. But the relationship between people and footballers, and the resentment people have for footballers, is for idiots and arseholes. And most people are not that.
Well, that is the most positive thing I've ever heard, that most people are not arseholes. That is a great thing to take away from that conversation this morning. The Premier League, Daniel, it kind of feels trivial talking about it now, but are you excited about this? Are you excited about the fact that you've got a clash between Manchester City and Arsenal, for example, back on your screen? Surely this is a fixture that you care about. If not that, then what about Spurs and United on Friday? This feast of football is here, Daniel. Are you ready?
Yeah, it's great to have the football back, and it feels fitting, because what we've seen is, just before the football comes back, we've seen an example of why football is so important and crucial in our society. At a terrible time, a footballer has used the platform accorded to him by football, has used everything that people have given to football over the last 200 years, because it's that enabled Marcus Rashford to do what he did. And that has reminded us that football started off not because of money, but started off because like-minded people banded together to make the world a better place, to give themselves something fun to do, to compete, to then give representation and identity to their local area. And that's what football is. And so, yeah, I mean, I've missed football like everyone else, because football has been a part of my life for longer than I can remember. And that's the case for a lot of other people too. And when we think about football, we don't just think about 22 men kicking the ball about. We think about our families, and we think about the people that we go to football with, and we think about all the joy that football has brought us. So the fact that football's coming back today at a time when there's precious little other joy knocking about is excellent. And although it is probably money that has made football restart, we need to look at that money not just in terms of money that goes into the pockets of billionaire owners, which it does, but money that keeps industry alive. We don't want football clubs going to the wall because they represent people's heritages. But even beyond that, they are a source of employment for lots of people, for people that make the tea, for ground stewards, for people that work on the ticket, in the ticket office, all those things. And so football coming back gives those people a fighting chance of maintaining their jobs. And so it's important that it comes back for that reason. But yeah, I mean, in terms of entertaining us at a terrible time, it's also great that football's coming back. And we all fell in love with the game also because we love watching football kick the ball around. So although for me, football's not a television show, not a television program, it's a spectator sport. In the meantime, any port in a storm, and I will absolutely embrace what we're getting. And it seems that they're doing everything they can to help people stay safe, and they're certainly doing a lot more than lots of other industries are, if you look at what's going on in the shops at the moment, for example. So I think that what we should all do is we should find our joy where we can, and if we find joy in watching the football, which we do for many multifarious and very acceptable reasons, then we've got to dive in.
For sure, and you kind of parse through the table at the moment, Daniel, and you look for interesting storylines. It is hard to remove yourself from Marcus Rashford and Manchester United, even on the pitch, as an interesting storyline, because what we find fascinating doing previews of these at the moment is that everybody seems to be back fit. Everybody is ready to play. And with Manchester United, this creates a whole new dynamic to the season that we've had so far, where we're going to be chatting about Paul Pogba again. Not that we didn't chat about him when he was away from the game injured, but this is going to be a very interesting conclusion to the season. I mean, given how good Manchester United were before the break without him, given the fact that he returns, and given the fact that they've made a signing in Bruno Fernandes at the start of the season, who seems to have transformed their fortunes even a small bit. So I don't know, they definitely seem to be one of the more interesting facets going into Friday night's game against Tottenham Hotspur. How do you expect this season to finish up for them?
I think that they'll do quite well. I mean, it is really interesting to look at how the season's going to be. It's sort of the difference between when you used to watch a television show, and I know I said that football wasn't a television show, but when you used to watch a television show and you'd watch an episode every week, and that was how football was. It was that thing that gave you motor to your life, and now it's basically like a box set or a thing on Netflix that you just sit there and you're like, come on, we can do one more episode. It's 4 a.m. We're absolutely battered, but let's do one more episode. And that's what football is now. So I think that the clubs that are able to get on a roll quickly, we will see will be the ones that will do well. And I think that United will be one of those clubs that feel quite confident because they were on a roll beforehand, and now they've got Marcus Rashford has brought just so many good vibes that they'll be on a buzz from that. I'm sure that the rest of the squad will be buzzing on account of that as well. And they've got Paul Pogba back. So the thing is they're playing another club for whom fortunes have sort of changed over lockdown. And lockdown came at a really good time for Tottenham. And they've now got Harry Kane back, and Son back, and Lamela back, and Bergwijn back. So those two clubs are more or less, they're in direct competition for the Champions League. I mean, I think United will probably take a draw. And if they win, that's probably it for Spurs. But they're playing perhaps the other club, apart from Liverpool, who are obviously buzzing because they're going to win the league, but the other club who are kind of feeling best about themselves over the last period, and for different reasons. United because things were going really well, and now they feel they're going better, and Tottenham because things were going terribly, but because they had a lot of injuries, they're now back. What we're not sure about is which players are going to be able to get back up to speed immediately. And so Pogba, for example, I'm not sure he'll start against Tottenham because I think Solskjaer will be worried slightly about the balance of midfield against a good team, having two high-risk, high-reward players in Pogba and Fernandes, and also he's barely played in a year. So I think that they'll probably ease him in quite slowly. But certainly that game looks the pick of them, although I'm looking forward to Villa and I've forgotten who they're playing. I'm looking forward to nonetheless to Villa and Sheffield United tonight, because Villa are at the bottom and have to start winning, and they're running out of time. And Sheffield United will feel that they've got a really decent shot at getting into the Champions League if they can start well. So it's actually the fixtures that we've got to begin with are quite exciting when you add in Arsenal, Man City as well. And so it should be a good start. And it is just one after another. It's like a World Cup.
Daniel, enjoy it. Good chatting to you.
You too. See you again.